Well, good afternoon,
Okay.
Scott Baker.
It said we are live, and at that moment you froze
We're
for me,
here
which
with
is fine.
okay. I'm still live. I'm here. Hopefully you can still
Yeah.
see me.
Yeah. You're a little fuzzy. Are we allowed to say where you are here for this edition of Lead Better?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I am visiting my son who is working temporarily in Iceland. And
Hmm.
so
Aha.
the sun will not set until 11:15 p.m. tonight.
Well, terrific. Well, regardless, this shows our commitment that we're going to bring these daily discussions around the admired leadership field notes, come hell or high water, and maybe there'll be some high water in the next couple of days as we do these. So if Mikey freezes here, then I've got plenty to talk about, so it'll all be great. But we're glad
Right.
you're here right now. We're glad you're all watching. If you're watching live or listening later, it's terrific. And this is all about diving into the field notes and those who are just fascinated by leadership, who love talking about this stuff as we do. But the one today is called Are You an Agile Learner? Now we sometimes use and hear in business the word agile in terms of systems and organizations and development uh, and it's a good word. I mean, agile just it makes you feel good when you say it. Like we all want to be agile, right?
Yes. But in project management, Agile has now taken on this whole
Hmm.
new realm of you're talking about a very specific thing when you bring up Agile.
Hmm.
And I think
Yeah.
in project management today, it's either an Agile project management system or what's called a waterfall project management
Yeah.
system.
Right.
And you've got these two things. But that's not what we're talking about today at all. We're
Correct.
basically
But
talking about agility.
but what happens in people's minds when you see it is you're like, well, is that a division of agile project management? There's a little overlap because there's part of this idea in being an agile learner that is, are you iterative? Are you moving quickly and connecting dots between things? Is there a workflow? Even in I know, and I'm not an expert in agile project management, but there's a Kanban system, but Kanban, there's also a personal Kanban. So you can see the overlap. So my question is, we would all love to think we're agile learners. Like, oh, great. That I haven't reached that point where my cognitive synapses are really shutting down. And yet the question becomes, as I sometimes bring up, which is, are you fully baked by the time you're an adult? You might be looking for an agile learner, but if you're not an agile
Well, there's
learner, can you
definitely,
get better?
I think that there's probably tests, right? So you probably are aware of some agility tests that
Hmm.
are supposed to test whether or not you're like the ability to sit Indian style on the floor, sit crisscross applesauce, and be able to stand up without putting your hands on the floor. It's a famous kind of test that you do in CrossFit, isn't it?
Yeah.
To kind of stage where
Well,
you're
I don't
at.
know.
Is that all
I
about
don't know.
agility?
Yeah, there certainly in agility and mobility, there are things that you can do physically. So what I would propose here is that yes, we should all work to our potential, right? We would say, can I reach my genetic or physical potential in a certain physical skill? Well, even if you can't make a radical change in the way that your brain processes things, understanding the way your brain processes things, because there's a lot of divisions there. It's not just like I got this brain. There's a lot of different pieces. Then you can start to say, well, there's probably a way that you're thinking about this that has a real benefit and skill and advantage over their folks. And there may be some things that you're going to be a little bit behind on. You want to at least reach the maximum that you can on those things. So I think there are some solutions here. And that's why I do like the field note. I like the idea of the question of saying, well, am I? Because this even feeds to like, Arthur Brooks had a book a year or two ago called Strength to Strength that was just going after people exactly like me, which is if you've been this sort of, creative person, you've been doing this great work, and then all of a sudden you're in your 50s, you get to the 60s, and then you're like, is it fluid intelligence or is it crystallized intelligence? Is there a dividing line? Do you go over that in a particular week and you're like, oh, can't learn anything new now?
Right. And so what are the obvious skills when it comes to whether or not you've got agility or not? Some of them are listed here in the middle of the field note. A few of the obvious
Hmm.
indicators: new information data becomes available. Agile learners let go of outdated viewpoints pretty easily, so they don't
Hmm.
they don't fight against it. If you have learning agility, you're more apt to challenge established norms and likely to
Hmm.
push against existing solutions in your pursuit of something that might be more innovative, right?
Hmm.
You regularly seek input and feedback from others and use it to improve performance, right? But there's other things that are a little less obvious. Can you think of are those the obvious ones that kind of jump out because they're listed here in the field note? But anything else that those are just kind of descriptive of anyone who's got an agile brain, right?
Well, I think that one of the things that we kind of get into is this idea of these are all pattern matching things to a degree. It's like, are you seeing the less obvious options? Are you connecting things? Are you making the jump or seeing the second and third and fourth order consequences of things? So look at it this way. Um, when we're evaluated, and I brought this up the other day about true aptitude testing, which isn't done that often. We often have interest tests or things that are fairly superficial because true aptitude testing takes a long time and it's expensive. Long time, it takes a full day. But the point being, the other day we talked about the idea of setting very specific follow-up things, which is a project management thing, which is, all right, we're going to end this meeting. What do I do about this next thing, right? I'm specifically going to go in here. So when you think about the stages of what's this thing that I'm doing, and you say, well, what kind of thinking do I need to bring to this kind of problem? So let me give you a couple examples, see if this resonates with you. So you could have an aptitude that is high, meaning it's very facile for you. You could have an aptitude that registers as low, and low doesn't necessarily mean bad, right? So the test would be this. So you can there's often an aptitude test thing, something called idea productivity, which means if I just gave you a sheet of paper and I said, I need you to write down, 50 things you could do with a nickel, right? Some people would be like, "Duh, duh, 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 duh," all of a sudden they'd have 50 things in like 2 minutes. Other people would sit there, they'd write two ideas, and they wouldn't be able to get past that. Now, they may also be logical. And so, where does that apply? Well, many people, and a lot of people I learned when I was working, and oftentimes going back to this aptitude testing place where I recommended people over 30 years, that lawyers often come in very upset about their jobs. Like they've been doing it for a long time, they're not happy and they test them, and it's because they have high idea productivity. But the job of being a lawyer, in most cases, is low idea productivity, meaning you're not in the courtroom dealing with all kinds of inputs. You're not being the talk show host and the traffic cop, or working in these sort of. You're not the air traffic controller, which is you're processing all kinds of information. Your job is to sit there, look at a piece of information, examine it carefully from about 42 different facets, and think about all the different implications around it slowly. So that's actually a skill. It doesn't mean that it's bad to be low in your idea productivity. What it means is if your brain races at this, 180 miles an hour, and you're in a 20-mile an hour, job, you're going to be miserable. Now,
Right.
use your strength in the place where it's a strength, because there will be a way for that to be an agile process for you, but it'll be different than the way it is for another person. Now, I have more examples, but just on that one, did that one make sense to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I wonder if the notion of whether or not it's fully baked in or not comes back up because I'm trying to
Hmm.
think of like where this applies, and mostly where it would apply would be in talent selection.
Hmm.
And if you have a team of people that is mostly agile kinds of people who can do the type of thing that you just described,
Hmm.
and and just a handful that aren't, that might be a great mix. But talent selection is really important here. How much of that aptitude is actually tested for in many of our organizations? Uh,
Oh,
the aptitude testing that you're talking
I've seen very little of it ever done
about. Right.
anywhere, right? And so one of the things that you then say is, and I'm just going to give you a couple more examples because I think what I'm trying to do is not say, well, if you haven't had this aptitude test, then you're stuck. No, you can all start to think about the patterns. These are ways your brain works that after your adolescence don't change that much. I don't think this means you can't get better at being an agile learner. You can improve to your potential in those areas. But for example, they will give you a test where you're given like six pictures, and there might be a cell phone, there might be a mountain, you might have a piano, there might be a car, there might be an old fashioned typewriter, and then there's a kitchen knife. Now, if you had 50 sets of 6 pictures and you were given a certain amount of limited time where you had to take a pencil and a red pencil and draw a line through the 3 things that are connected, how fast would you be able to say the cell phone, the typewriter, and the piano all have keyboards? How fast would your brain recognize that? Some people will go
Right.
through and be bup, 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 and they're like, got it, right? Other people will not be able to do that very fast at all. And you could sit there and drill with them all day long and they're not going to get better. Now, they have other ways that their brains work that are enormous advantages, right?
Right.
But you're not going to make them better at that test. Another 6 picture thing might be say, I'm going to give you a picture of, maybe you have the sunshine and the farmer's field, and then you work through a sequence that leads to the plant and the food and the dinner plate and everybody sitting around. Well, how fast can you put them in order, right? So that you see the sequence logically. Some people, it'll come intuitively. So that agility, and I think all of us have a different kind of agility. So I think in this case, you're kind of saying, well, what's my unique agility that I can then bring to the task in front of me? What is my life task at the moment? And how can I best exploit that? Because I can work hard at these things, but I should be applying the things where I have some strengths.
Right. It sounds like though, if this is like a chief requirement for you and you're hiring, like this is what you look for more than anything, you're going to have like a room full of golden retrievers chasing squirrels, right? Like,
Well,
because
I think you need all kinds of these people, right? I don't
yeah,
think it's any one thing.
right.
Does that make sense?
Oh
You,
yeah,
you see what
definitely.
I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but how important is it? Like, if we had the ability to do this kind of aptitude testing prior to hiring people, how high would you rank agility compared to the other things that the aptitude test kind of meets out for you?
Um, well, I don't need everybody on my football team to be able to run, a really fast 40-yard dash.
Right.
I need some very strong people who aren't as fast as the kickoff returner. So I think that's the thing, which is looking carefully. And probably some organizations get to be a little bit too, samey, where they're too, you're like, oh, I'm like this, so I need to have people like this. You're going to need differences in your team, and you as a leader you have some universals. That's a big part of admired leadership. But I think that the ability to have a team, then you can have an agile project management team, but having agile learners, agile performers at different levels and different scopes, getting those people in the right chairs on the bus, as they say, the right seats on the bus, that's the magic.
Right. Okay. So let's say that we come down to the end of the field note. We come to this question of like, well, how many agile learners do you have on your team? And you think out of 10, I've only got 2. Is
Mhm.
it spending more time getting the people that you've hired to be more agile, or is this just a matter of a talent question for the future?
I I think this has been my personal conviction. Haven't really talked about this field note with anybody else in the firm. My view would be it's going to be unique to everybody's work scenario, what kinds of people they need in those jobs. You may only need 2 agile, fast learners in a particular kind of a situation to move your team forward. You may have some offensive linemen who are going to move a little more slowly, but they're going to kind of push their way forward bit by bit, but with such strength that you didn't need them to be a running down the field like a maniac. So I think that's part of the wisdom here, which is we sometimes immediately think everything that sounds good is the universal good, and that's not always the case. So we would also like to think, I'd love to be the most agile thinker, in the room. I'd love to be the
Right.
most flexible or the strongest, in a CrossFit competition. But I have my strengths in those competitions that other people don't have. Right.
Right.
So get good at the thing that you're good at, minimize your weaknesses, work on them well enough, shop them out to other people if they're not, that they don't work for you. We do that on our team. There are things that we have, folks that lead technical teams and folks that lead sales teams and all kinds of people in chairs that are things that are not Mikey's strength or Scott's strength.
Right. Not
I
being
got a
precious.
little I got a little more impassioned about this whole topic than I was anticipating, Mikey, I have to
No, it's
say.
great. It comes in my mind. I kind of process it as like, just can you not be precious about stuff? Right? Can you
Yeah.
figure out a way to be able to have some kind of flexibility that really works into the way that you manage the team instead of just the way that you work? as well. I think there's some great advantages all the way around.
Yes, and
Okay,
I
perfect.
think that's what we do want.
Great
So
topic. Interesting way to approach it.
mhm.
Yeah.
Dynamite.
Okay.
Well, we'll
Great.
talk by tomorrow.
All right. We'll speak
You're gonna
tomorrow.
be in you might be actually at sea.
Yes. Yeah, I think we might be just still on the port side, not pushing out yet, but we'll be pretty close to being out at sea. We're going to stay pretty close to
Excellent.
the coast as we go around.
Dynamite. All right. Thanks, Mikey.
All right. Bye now.